All right. Bismillah wa salatu wassalam ala rasulillah. So welcome everybody who is watching this. I want to introduce my internet friend who apparently we lived in the same state and have been in the same rooms beforehand. She is an incredible premarital coach. And so Lama Abu Bakr, please introduce yourself to the Hana Al-Qasri YouTube channel.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you, Hana, for having me. I just love, introducing both of our audiences to each other because I feel like we do have a lot of similar or mutual followers, and so, inshallah, whatever we talk about today is very beneficial. But what I do is I help people get married. I help people get into the mindset they need to find the spouse they're looking for, and it's very value based. I help people figure out what matters in marriage, what doesn't matter in marriage, and actually like show up in a very secure way to attract the person that they're looking for. And so that's what I do.
Yeah, I love that. And it's funny because even when I think about the content that I put out on social media, despite the fact that my work is as a trauma coach, the most popular content on my channel is marriage related. And so it just speaks to really the need of people to have some sort of like set of principles, set of some sort of direction of how to navigate the marriage process, because obviously the way it's been done for a very long time is very different than how we navigate it currently, right, in our modern time. So maybe we can start off with that. Like in your head, Lama, what is like the old way of getting married? And what is the new, when I say new way, I mean understanding the circumstances of our current times, especially for like those of us who are Muslims living in the West, the new way of getting married. Like what needs to change because of the current times we live in?
Well, first of all, expectations are very different, right? Before, the role of a husband and a wife was more of like, a provider, someone to live with, and like it's very limited about what we're looking for in a marriage. We didn't put marriage on a pedestal like we do today. Today, we want our spouse to be everything. We want them to be our coach, our therapist, our like best friend, we talk all day, and we just understand each other on a different level. And even when I describe this, some people could agree with me and be like, yeah, like that's what I am looking for. But the reality is, when you don't understand what the role of a husband is, what the role of your best friend is, what the role of your therapist, and you're putting all of that onto one person, things will feel much heavier. Every person you talk to will be like, there's no like, I can't do this. They're not meeting everything I'm looking for. And so what tends to happen is when we're not clear on those expectations, we reject people who are actually great, excellent potentials, because we think there's something better out there. And we're constantly in this like, there's something better out there. There's something better out there. And I'm not talking to women who barely have standards. I'm talking to women who think like marriage will like complete everything. Okay, if that makes sense. And so that needs to be balanced out. So in the old ways, it was so much easier to get married. Right? It was just like, DEEN, family, all right, good. Yeah, he has a heartbeat, good. All right, it's a match. So things work out, right? Supposed to work, right? So, and what happens is, and even when I was single, I was in the same boat. I was like, why is it so hard to get married, to find someone who has exactly what I'm looking for? And I just had to reset my expectations of what matters in marriage. What is marriage about? And learning how to love someone with the flaws they have, even if it's not exactly what I'm looking for, that's what creates love. That's what creates connection. And because we have social media and all these things, it really distorts what matters and what doesn't, which is throwing off a lot of women, a lot of men. And so all of that needs to be reset to what matters. And we have to go back to, practically speaking, what happens in marriage. Right. And so in today's marriage, we want more of a partnership, which is beautiful. Right. So we look for what values matter in a partnership. I want someone who's compassionate, understanding, respectful, who treats me like more of a partnership. Right. So that's the main priority of what I'm looking for. All the other things are just kind of a cherry on top, not necessarily the priority.
Yeah.
So the goal is to nowadays we have to approach marriage from a very value-based, like what matters to me, rather than coming from our egos, because our egos have a bunch of expectations of what it wants to fulfill a certain need, and it's
Mhm.
so subconscious, and if we don't recognize it, we'll fall into the wrong relationships.
I love that. There's this thing that I always think about with like the way marriage is looked at very recently, even in just the past few decades compared to how we view it now. And it was largely kind of based in duty. Like the idea is there are certain very explicitly drawn out roles. This person's going to go to work and make the money. This person's going to cook and clean and this and that. And then we're
Right.
going to have kids. And it was very much a like, let's just live life because this is how we're supposed to live it. There wasn't a lot of there wasn't this like dynamicism of like, well, how do we mesh as two people? What comes up? And so in communal cultures where we both come from communal cultures, like remind me,
Syrian.
Syrian, you're
Yeah.
Syrian, and then Yemeni, right? A lot of the women we work with individually are coming from communal cultures. It's any means necessary to maintain the sense of community and the semblance of like togetherness, even if it means like a certain level of sacrifice. And this is the unfortunate kind of intersection of our work. Why does a trauma coach talk about marriage? Because oftentimes, even with that idea, you are recognizing that people are sacrificing things that are causing significant damage to them. So we'll sacrifice for many, many women the
Mhm.
physical safety of a woman. I think about all the women who I've worked with who were in domestic violence relationships and were being told to be patient, which is so counter to Islamically what's supposed to happen in these circumstances. But there's like that element. There's the element of like, children growing up, seeing their parents in very duty-based marriages, not very love-based marriages, a love developed. But it was a love of like, we've been together so long. It wasn't like this intense, like passionate, intimate love that perhaps us in this day and age are looking for, or what maybe we were even seeking out when we were getting married. And there's like a generational whiplash that happens,
Mm.
right? It's like you're watching your parents in this, and so many people watch their parents in a loveless marriage, which is a whole other thing. They're recognizing this, and there's an intense fear because, especially as women, when we're young girls, like we are very much in need of that softness, that attention, that love, that connection. And I think about. I'm sure you've heard this. You've had to have heard this already from one of your clients. Like, I'm afraid to become my mom. I'm afraid to have what my mom had.
Right.
Because so many of us watch that kind of like self-sacrificial way of living in a marriage, and it was applauded often. But now in modern day, we're actually understanding the psychological, neurological, physiological, and spiritual impact of that, which is that's why the Prophet ﷺ didn't define marriage as this thing of like, oh, well, stay together by any means necessary. It was, okay, let's make sure things in the first place are suitable. There's a good deen, there's good character, right? There's a certain level of compatibility and a certain level of attraction.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say, Lama, from the women you work with, are the like give me top three issues that you see in the mindsets of women who are trying to get married today that are blocking them from identifying like good spouses?
Yes. Okay. I love this question because the first one is 100%. It's shame. It's shame. They feel shame about themselves. And the problem is when you feel shame, it's this feeling of like something's wrong with me. Like something's wrong, something deeply wrong with me. And in order to get rid of this shame, I need to find someone to tell me that there's nothing wrong with me.
Mm.
Right. So that's coming from, it's kind of coming from the ego of like, how do I fix this feeling of shame so that I can stop feeling it?
Yep.
When you're driven from that feeling, you will make decisions just like based off of how you feel in the moment rather than long term, like what matters in the long term, like marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So as an example, people like that fall for love bombing, which is like when someone like expresses a lot of like affection and love in the beginning and they're like, oh my God, like I feel amazing. But it's kind of a technique of, some there's certain narcissistics or just like people who are not very emotionally
Intelligent.
yeah. So they fall for people like that. So they fall for more of the attention and more of like how they feel a fleeting moment rather than like, wait, no, like what actually matters in marriage. But because they don't have that ability to get out of the shame and they're just kind of stuck in shame and trying to get rid of it, the decision making skills is very hard. It's very hard to even access. Your whole nervous system is just like, there's something wrong with me. I just need a man to tell me that I'm good enough. Okay. That coming from that place, I've seen a lot of women struggle with that. And kind of a side note, I also help men with marriage, and subhanAllah, the past like 7 months, I've helped about 4 men actually get married. And it's so much easier for men to get married, not because of their options or whatever, but because they're not as shameable as women.
Yeah.
Okay. Men, I tell them what to do, ABC, they get it done. They're like married the next, like literally after a month. I'm like, okay, see, it's so much easier because they're able to snap out of it. But women were programmed to feel so much shame and guilt about who you are and all the things. And so it's like we're programmed to believe that once you get married, you'll be more worthy. And so obviously, if you're coming from that belief, it's very hard to actually navigate relationships from a very secure way. And this happens, but by the way, on both the anxious attachment side and on the avoidant attachment side. The avoidant attachment side, they have the same kind of fears, but it's masked in a different way. But it's stemming from shame as well. Okay. So that's, I would say, number 1. Number 2 is pressure. Pressure of like, first of all, age, feeling like I'm behind or I'm not good, or, everyone else is getting married, but I'm not. So I got to like get on it and figure this out. When you're under pressure, your nervous system does not have the capacity to just like relax and be curious about the other person. It's more about like, all right, is this it? Is it not it? All right, next, right? There's no time to just like relax and just like, let's see if this is going to work. What tends to happen on 2 ends of the spectrum is either they dismiss the potential very quickly, or they drag it on because they're afraid there's no one else left. And so they're like, because there's pressure, right? I got to make this work. And I've already invested so much time on him. So let me make this work. Also not a good strategy. Right. I would say the third thing is scarcity. So feeling like there's not enough men, not enough women. Allah doesn't care about what you think is real and what you think is not real. Allah is capable of all things. And he sends the right person when you don't even know how he's going to come. You don't get signals or hints about when he's coming. And just because you don't see the man that you want in front of you doesn't mean he's not available eventually. Right? What the person that Allah has written for you is 100% like coming from Allah, and the way he sends them to you is not your business. But when we're stuck on scarcity, and I think the biggest problem is a lot of women, because they're stuck in scarcity and they're sharing with their friends the problems of what they're going through. Now we're all the whole community's like stuck in scarcity, and we're all believing the same lies, and so it's much harder. It's much harder to kind of like believe, no, I don't need, even if there's not enough men, I don't need a group of men. I just need one person to marry. And that one person, like, Allah is far beyond capable of bringing him to me. I don't need to stress out about how there's not enough. That's not my business to stress out about that. And so the woman who does the work, does the inner shift to get out of that mindset, and all 3 of those categories I just mentioned, and she sees herself as, I am a slave of Allah and I submit to Allah no matter what. I know for a fact Allah can do what he wills, and I'm going to keep asking for him and I'm going to become the woman that is a match for the kind of marriage I want. And that's how Allah sends it. Like, that's when you're having that mindset, you approach prospects much more relaxed. You're more yourself. You're more authentic. So, and that's like on a practical level and on a spiritual level, that's how like relationships actually work. You got to relax. You got to be like secure. You have full tawakkul in Allah. And so that's when you're stuck in one of those 3 categories, it's very hard to access that because you're nervous, just like really stressed out.
And those are such good points. So the idea of shame, pressure, and scarcity. And it's funny because all of those are rooted in trauma, right? Not the pressure one as much. The pressure is more of like cultural beliefs of you have an expiration date. It's always so interesting because, there are so many unhealthy ideas and beliefs that are parroted on the internet, especially. And like in our age, that's the most influential content on the way we view marriage. And so even, oftentimes you'll hear like, well, yeah, women have their biological clock, there's an expiration date, there's this, there's that. And I just, first, you can call it out for what it is. Like, all of this language started happening right after the explosion of red pill. So I find it very like disappointing from the perspective of a Muslim woman, that it was parroted, like kuffar, who basically are keen on, let me hold conservative values when it benefits me, but also then I'm going to hold very sinful, like animalistic beliefs about what I can sleep around with anyone I want. I can commit, zina anytime I want. And I'm going to just make, it's like a very dunyai perspective. We have to be very honest with that, because I think a lot of people are trying to intellectualize red pill and like Islamicize it. And that's not what it is, right? So the idea of like, oh, a woman there's so many perspectives that if we were just genuinely like attuned to the advice and wisdom of the Prophet ﷺ, we'd realize we're the ones in our own way. So like the idea of like, well, oh, I can't marry, a man who's like in his 30s, never married, and refuses to look at a woman in her 30s, right? Happens so often. That was not a thought in the mind of the Sahaba, right? Like the fact that like when widows, I forgot who it blows my, it slips my mind, but there was one specific Sahabi that when he passed away in battle, I remember learning about this when I was studying the Seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, the Sahaba started arguing over who was going to propose and marry his widow. And there was that level of like, not only like a level of like respect and honor of like their deceased friend, but also a recognition like, this is a good Muslim woman. Yes, she's been married before. Yes, and we're done. Just let's be straight up. We're stupid, because what we're doing is we're essentially limiting our risks because of these ideas that people have, and these sensitivities that were not based in anything. They're actually deep down, they actually stem from colonialism, like this obsession with people who've never been married before and never all of it. A certain age is a colonial idea. It was not an Islamic idea whatsoever.
Right.
The extent of how many widows and divorced women were in widower men and divorced men were like married very easily. So I put that out there just to challenge the thinking of many people who are going to watch this, that are going to say, well, Lama, you're saying pressures, but I am 32 years old. I am 35. And it's like, yeah, alhamdulillah, there exist men who haven't been, to be frank, poisoned by these ideas. Like, it's okay to have your preference. Of course. Yeah, you're going to have your preference of, you want someone who's never been married before. If you've not been, completely understandable. It's another to have a repulsion. I think that's a huge issue as well. One thing I do want to talk about, Emma, because like just from a place of reality, and I think we come from like two very different sides of this work, where like you're coming in with like this and necessity of hopefulness for your clients, because they're often coming to you with a lack of hope and belief in what is possible. And then I'm the one who tends to work with the ones who like had the hope, and the hope got broken because something terrible happened, and now it literally changed their brain, and they're kind of suffering as a consequence. And I'd love to hear you speak to like the idea of the taqwa issue. Like, there's a genuine lack of taqwa in both men and women. What I have found, and I'm just being frank, from both what I've heard from brothers that I've worked with, from women that I've worked with, what I see on social media, what I see in communication with male mentors and shaykh and scholars of our community, is the fitna exists on both sides. The fitna that I see from men tends to be a lot more damaging, and I believe it is likely because there's just a little more of a cultural like appropriateness to, like, we already oftentimes in our cultures are okay with men doing haram things, because it's like, oh, we'll just marry him off later, whereas we hold them into a much higher standard, even though Islamically that is not the way the punishment for zina is equal, whether you're a man or a woman. How do you navigate that? Like, the fact they're really, really, truly ill-intended, irresponsible, unpious individuals who then put up this facade of like, I am religious and I do this and I want to do all these things for you. Because it can
Mhm.
be very hard, even from the perspective of someone who knows and understands narcissism, both as the personality disorder and as the actual like qualities. Some people, men and women, are very good at masking it. I am able to catch it very quickly because I don't have any emotions in the game. Like,
Mhm.
but so how would you advise a woman who's like in that process to,
For sure. Yeah. So this is, I have personal experience with this before I got married.
oh girl,
When my
don't we all?
mindset, huh?
Don't we
So
all?
yeah, don't we all? But like when my mindset was more focused on like I just want to get married. I just want someone to love me. It is so hard to catch on to these like narcissistic traits.
Yeah.
Okay? Because you're not focusing on like what matters. You're focusing on like how can I be loved?
Mm,
Right? That's what I was kind of mentioning in the beginning. You're just like, okay, what is it? Okay, this narcissistic guy, whatever he's saying, all the good things, right? I'm religious, I'm this, I'm that. It just sounds so amazing. And then I develop this fantasy in my head, like, oh my God, it's gonna be so amazing. He's religious. And there's this like obsession with religiousness, not on a like, it's like a romanticizing of like he's religious and like I'm gonna marry like someone who's really religious and we're gonna pray together all day. And it's just like you got to take it down a notch on terms of like what matters. Okay, he says he's religious, but how is his character? And I'm not saying like focusing on how he talks. Focus on when you bring up a problem, does he dismiss it? Does he like actually like notice how he acts, not how he talks, notice how he acts. And I teach like and before you marry someone, like give it 90 days. If culturally, whatever, make it less. But 90 days is a good time for you to actually see when someone's acting out or like being, because people can't keep up with the long-term mask
yeah.
for a very long time, right? But your job, this is why I really emphasize when a woman is in her power, when she's empowered, when she knows her worth, when she knows she has nothing to rush, and she's a slave of Allah, and there's nothing that can harm her except for Allah. She's not afraid of potentially, she noticing, oh, this kind of makes me uncomfortable. I'm gonna reject this.
Hmm.
She
Hmm.
has no problem with that. She's very secure. She knows that Allah like wouldn't put her in an uncomfortable situation because she trusts her intuition. She trusts when something's uncomfortable. She
Hmm.
checks in. Is this a fear from my trauma, or is this an actual like legitimate? It feels uncomfortable.
Hmm.
As an example, I remember I was talking to someone before I was married, and I would notice they would say exactly what I want to hear. Right? Like I would say, "Oh, I'm into this kind of books, and I'm into."
Me too.
Yeah, and they're like, "Oh, me too. I read this book, and it felt very like, oh, like not you didn't have ChatGPT back then, but very like very perfect answers."
Yeah.
Okay, and so back then I didn't really have the skill to notice, but I now looking back at it, I see it. It's like, oh, I was here. I could. There was like my spidey senses kind of went off of like this is a little too perfect. Something is off, and I wouldn't push to challenge it because I was afraid of like some
Backlash.
yeah something right. I was afraid of something. Eventually, when I improved that, I also got the same experience, and then I realized, oh, this is where I need to speak up.
Hmm.
He's saying exactly what I want to hear. This doesn't feel right. So then I ask follow-up questions. Oh, you like that book? What did you experience on chapter 13? Right? Something like that. Right? I would like really ask very specifically to the point where you can't make things up.
Yeah. Like challenging the authenticity.
Yeah, challenging the authenticity. And then there has to be a certain level of self-trust.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I say self-trust, more of like when something feels off, you got to sit and reflect for a minute. Why does this feel off? Does this remind me of like a childhood wound, or is this something that I genuinely want to question? And if it is, then you bring it up and you ask him, and you're observing how he reacts.
Hmm.
Every time you observe how he reacts. Okay, if does he apologize after he says something mean or something, right? How does he act? That's what you're focusing on. So what I teach with women is like your only job is you're just observing. You're not falling in love. You're not
You're
trying
not
to
convincing.
yeah, you're not convincing anyone. You're not selling yourself on how he should marry you. You're just observing. Is this worth it for me for him to join my life? And if I have doubts, I'm going to speak up.
Yeah.
And that's it. And every day you're making istikhara. And I emphasize this. Every day you're making istikhara because it puts you in the mindset of detachment. You have to detach. Like, this is, as soon as you're attached, you kind of lost the plot, and now you're subconsciously, your brain like just kind of finds ways to make it work, even though you know there's problems.
Yeah.
So it's so nuanced, but like you gotta detach, and you gotta be in the observer mode.
Yeah. I'm at my headphone looking all wacky. Oh, that was so good. Especially this, I was going to say the istikhara part is so important because at the end of the day, like this is a spiritual journey. Like the idea of a marriage in the dunya is this is something that had been destined well before you even existed in this world. Like
Mhm.
you need to be willing to consult and rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that process, because there are going to be things that are going to slip under your radar. Like none of us, even the experts of us, are 100% invincible to the idea of like our wounds coming up, the want, the can I look over this, can I, what if I start convincing? And there are some people that are just, unfortunately, because oftentimes for different reasons, to explain it's not to justify, right? When narcissism is a personality inequality, it's a personality inequality. We talk about it almost like it's this disease, but we all are a little narcissistic.
Oh yeah.
Some people are dastardly narcissistic, and narcissism is an issue of taqwa, period. Like if you are the further along on the spectrum of narcissism you get to severity, there's something spiritually damaged inside of you. And this is why that piece of you connecting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help you see that is really important. Even when you think about like Surah Nas, right? Min al-jinnati wan nas, the fact that we're seeking refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his protection from the shayateen, but also evil people. And you will come to know, and even as you're saying them, I'm like in my head before thinking about proposals that I'd gotten before I was married, and the red flags and things that like I look at and I'm like, subhanallah, how scary, sinister. I think about, and I'll give you guys this example, and there's just elements of Allah's protection in this process when you really are making dua and you're really opening up to like his wisdom as you're building, as you're describing them at your self-trust. Is I had a friend who had gotten engaged, and the man that she had gotten engaged to was extremely psychologically and emotionally abusive. I mean, I remember even on the day of her like bridal shower, they had done the aqd, or the
nikah,
kitab nikah. And she was so depressed. Like this, you watched like this woman who was a very, very sure, previously sure of herself, very good Muslim woman, kind, compassionate, smart, self-respecting, just completely become a shell of herself. And she ended up breaking it off. And I'm very proud of her for doing that, because psychological abuse is abuse. One of your rights as a husband and as a wife, it's one of the Islamic mutual rights in a marriage, is that you are protected from the harsh words of your spouse. That's an Islamic right. Just like you have a right to a mahar as a woman, just like you have a right to physical intimacy as a spouse, you have a right to that emotional protection from the words of your spouse. Nobody talks about that. But when you start realizing it's a right, you realize, oh shoot, if I actually am damaging this, then I'm going against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not just a matter of me hurting the other person. That man was proposed to me and didn't disclose that he was previously married. And I remember having this moment, and I'm like, this face is so familiar. Why is this person's face so familiar? And so I messaged a mutual friend, not that friend, but I messaged a mutual friend, and I was like, hey, so-and-so is previous like fiance husband, what was his name? And she told me the name, and it was him. And I thought, subhanallah, how scary that he lied, because you should disclose the fact that you had you were previously married, because that is a marriage, right? Even though it wasn't consummated, it was a marriage. And try to play off this, like looking for his next victim, essentially, instead of going and doing the work. So it really is that scary. And you have to,
I love that you even brought this up, because a woman who knows, and I'm going to use this analogy, okay? A woman who knows she's a 5-course meal. She's a 5-course meal. She knows she's worthy. She knows her soul is very precious. If someone comes and offers her a moldy French fry, she's not going to be appealed by that. Okay? She's going to recognize it, because she knows this language that you're using doesn't fit the 5-course meal. It doesn't fit the table. What I'm looking for is someone that complements my 5-course meal. And so when you see yourself like truly as a creation of Allah, you're worthy. There's that doesn't make sense to talk bad to you. And when you cleaned up your self-talk and you don't speak ill of yourself, someone who comes and offers you really bad thoughts about yourself, you're just like, that doesn't make sense. Because on a brain level, on a cognitive level, you're not familiar with like the abuse, so you're like, you're not going to take it. But someone who's very familiar with the abuse internally, right? I'm someone who self-talks, who shames myself all day and night. I'm
not trauma
enough.
Victims, listen to this.
Yeah. I'm not good enough. I'm not this. I'm not that. If that's what you're telling yourself all day, and someone comes up to you and says, "Oh, you're not good enough," this is an acts and shows it in action. You're going to be like, "Yeah, this is familiar. This is normal. This is normal," and then you let it in.
Yeah.
Because it's normal.
It's familiar.
It's familiar. So this is why the emphasis on seeing yourself, the way you talk to yourself, actually weeds out these narcissistic people, because you don't even entertain it. You're not even attracted to it in the slightest bit. It turns you off. Like, it's like, ew, like, why would you even say that? Why would you even like talk to me that way? You don't even, you get, like, it's not even a thing. Because you see yourself as a precious diamond. Like, you don't do that.
Yeah. And this is, it's so funny because I already know so many people are going to get triggered by your analogy of like 5-course meal, because there's so much hate about the idea of women. It's, again, goes back to the red pill, right? The idea of like, well, women, an unmarried woman is less fit. And it's like, listen, bro, we're coming from a place of spiritual wisdom, which is each and every man and woman, elder and child, all in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, have a specific value because they are a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we align ourselves with that value, or we disalign ourselves with that value. When we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we follow his commands, when we are honoring the way we physically look, the time that we spend in worship, that is aligning ourselves with our value. In situations where we have been abused, whether it's through childhood or negative self-talk towards ourselves, distancing ourselves from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have experienced that which has harmed our sense of value, right? Not necessarily that being abused. I just want to clarify in case anyone runs with the idea that I'm saying that abuse makes you less valuable. What I'm saying is it distorts your perception of your self-value. Building that perception back up of, I am valuable. I am worth being spoken to kindly. I am worth being, respected. I am worth being given, giving respect out as well. I'm worth, wanting more for myself. And then there are certain Islamic rights that align with that. And many of the emotional, non-tangible, non-physical rights are very hard for people to grasp, right? A med is easy. It's an easy idea. Here's a number, or here's a physical item, a gift. You either gave it to me or you didn't. That's it, right? That's easy. Are you emotionally safe for me? That's a lot harder to understand, especially if you were not attuned to emotional safeness growing up. And again, this is the importance of understanding the way that trauma literally distorts your nervous system's perception of safety, your ability to receive it, your confusion about what comes up to you, both mentally and physiologically, like the physical way that your body reacts. I can tell, this can sound really odd, but I can tell the way in which someone's body has reacted to trauma just by looking at them. There have been literally times when I'm in the clinic and I'm listening to someone's lungs, and I'll literally just stop and I'll be like, do you have an anxiety disorder? Do you have a depressive disorder? Like, because I can tell simply by the way their shoulders are, their back, and the way they're breathing. And it's just, I've attuned to that because it becomes so truly visceral in your body. And so these are not small things. And, people oftentimes think like you're complicating it, and it's not. We're complicating it. We're finally understanding the complicated nature of it. It was always complicated. It was always complex. You're taking two different people and you're asking them to build a life together with all of the difficulty and all of the wounds and all of the hopes and all of the dreams and all of their beliefs. And that's what's so incredible about Islam, is it becomes a thing that aligns in like the intersection that pulls us together. But Lama, my final question to you, because I know we have a hard stop in 8 minutes. What would you say? What would you say to any woman who is, regardless of what her situation is, or the brothers who are watching this, interested in getting married, have a lot of fear about how to navigate it? What do they need to do? What's going on?
So ultimately at the core of what we want, when we say we want marriage, we say we want to be loved, we want to be chosen. That feeling of wanting to be loved and chosen, when you can't access it by yourself, you will feel a lot of anxiety. Like, I need to get it from someone. It's just like this like panic attack, like, oh, I need to get it now. I don't know how, right?
Oh, attachment.
Right. Yeah.
Insecure attachment all the way.
Right. And with the way it shows up with avoidance, also very subtle. They kind of tend to dismiss it because they're better at self-soothing. So that's a whole different story. But what I'm trying to say is, to anyone listening to this who thinks, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to love myself, but it's just so hard. Your value is not up for discussion. When you tell yourself, oh, if I love myself and in this, I'm being delusional, you're already being delusional by saying that you're not good enough. That isn't, that's a delusion. Because you're saying, oh, Allah's creation is not good enough. But then Lama, but you don't know the bad parts of me. You don't know this parts of me. You don't know. I see the bad parts of you, the most terrible, really dark parts of you, and I see the good parts of you. As a package, you are good enough. You are Allah's creation. You are created to be flawed in this way. When I say good enough, as human beings, we actually are not good enough, because we do need Allah to complete us. We're not good enough, but good enough as in, like, you're not broken. You're a human being designed to be flawed the way you are. When you truly get this on a nervous system level, you get it on a deep level, and you practice this, I promise you, relationships are so much easier. You'll start showing up to the next potential you talk to, and you're like, oh, do I want this? Do I not want this? Why? Because you're able to access that love right now. You're not like starving to get married right now. And the kind of potentials that show up are very different, because you don't tolerate crap from anyone anymore. You're just like, oh, this is just not okay, because you're a lovable, worthy soul. I keep emphasizing this because this is the core of how to start off in like actually navigating relationships. If you're anything other than that, if you're like nervous or anxious, or I don't know if it's going to happen, it's just going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess. And your thoughts about the opposite gender does matter. If you have thoughts about how men are, and yes, I don't blame you, right, for having negative thoughts about how men are, how women are, but there are good men out there. There are good women out there. And the one that is written for you is going to be a good person. And you have to focus on how they are, how Allah can create that. Yeah. It's not about your logic. It's not about what you think you can do. It's not about how you can find them. That's not your job. That's really not your job. Your only job is to clean up your thoughts about yourself, however you've been perceiving yourself as like not worthy and all, any of that. And Allah does the rest. He really does. Allah creates the rest. And we have to learn how to let go and have that tawakkul. That is the foundation of all of it. And I know some people can be like, oh, I hate when people tell me how to have tawakkul in marriage. I just want to get married. I just want a man right now.
Yeah, then you're definitely not prepared. You're not. Well, get ready, because you will not be able to withstand the ups and downs of marriages, the challenges, whether it's la samahallah, like a health issue comes up, in-law issues, financial issues, something's going to happen. Yeah. And you're not going to be prepared, because it's not going to be a perfect little whimsical dream of what it is. And every blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to come with its test. Sometimes the test is in a true challenge. Other times the test is in whether you're ready or not to recognize the blessing in front of you and be grateful for it.
Right. So, and saying on top of that, like this process right now, women who go into marriage where they feel really insecure, it shows up in their marriage, and they don't actually receive the love that they're looking for. Yeah. They don't experience love in their marriage because they're constantly thinking, my husband doesn't do enough. My husband doesn't do this. He doesn't do that. A woman doesn't know how to regulate herself. So she spills it all on her husband. Her husband doesn't feel good enough. And now we have tension, and the marriage breaks off.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's exhausting. And most of the time people would regret having gotten married in the first place. Then they come to me. Yeah. And then there's like, we're doing work on attachment. And there's so much more to be said here, Lama. Maybe we need to alhamdulillah, do a part 2 at some point, but I know you have to go. So let people know where they can find you.
Yeah. So I have a YouTube channel. I talk about all the things that you need to get married. And I have a series on decoding the marriage process. So if you're really feeling stuck, I talk about it from A to Z, how to prepare, how to be in the right mindset, all the obstacles that come up. I have so many videos on that. And so that alone is an enough resource to get you started. And I have a bunch of things you can work with me if you visit my website, and that's all linked in my YouTube channel as well.
Inshallah. And then I'll drop the link to your YouTube channel, and when the video comes out, just comment, inshallah, so people can go directly there too.
Yeah.
But inshallah, thank you so much for joining. I'm going to stop the recording now.